So you're very welcome to the model. Thank you so much for coming. We're delighted to launch officially our Yeats exhibition, Enter the Clowns, which looks at the circus as a metaphor in the work of Jack B Yeats. And just before I hand you over to our esteemed speaker today, I just want to say a few words of thanks to some people, friends and supporters of this exhibition. First of all, I'd like to thank the model board, and in particular Bernie Butler, our chair, who unfortunately couldn't be here today and sends her apologies. I'd like to thank Martina Bromley and all at Fulton Northwest for their support of this exhibition. I'd like to thank everyone involved in the Tread Softly Festival, the steering group and the Yates Partnership for their support of this exhibition. And also I'd like to thank the Department of Arts Heritage and the Gaeltacht for their financial support of the exhibition. And Hilary Pyle is someone who needs no introduction. She has been a regular visitor to the model over the years, and she always draws an incredible crowd, which is a testament to her amazing knowledge of Jack B Yeats. And personally, I just want to say that Hilary, her groundbreaking and pioneering work on the subject of Jack B Yeats has made curators like me's jobs so much easier. If it wasn't for Hilary Pyle, scholarship of Jack B Yeats would be a very, very different thing. So I'm delighted to hand you over to Hilary now. And just before I do, I want to say that downstairs, directly afterwards, we're going to launch the Tread Softly Festival, and there will be teas and coffees and refreshments served. So, Hilary Pyle, thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can't hear you can let me know. But I want to start, because of the great man celebrating his birthday today, I'm going to start with a poem by W. B. Yeats called High Talk. I'm sure you all know it back to front, but we're going to listen to it all the same. Yes. Processions that lack I think everyone's looking for seats, but I will go on nevertheless. Processions that lack high stilts have nothing that catches the eye. What if my great-granddad had a pair that were 20 foot high, and mine were but 15 foot? No modern stalks upon higher. Some rogue of the world stole them to patch up a fence or a fire. Because piebald ponies, led bears, caged lions make but poor shows, because children demand daddy longlegs upon his timber toes, because women in the upper stories demand a face at the pane that patching old heels they may shriek, I take to chisel and plane. Malachi Stiltjack am I. Whatever I learned has run wild, from collar to collar, from stilt to stilt, from father to child, all metaphor, Malachi, stilts and all. A barnacle goose far up in the stretches of night. Night splits and the dawn breaks loose. I, through the terrible novelty of night, stalk on, stalk on. Those great seahorses bare their teeth and laugh at the dawn. Well, this poem, which is one of W.B.'s last, always brings Jack to my mind because it's got so much of him in it. I think he'd also like those great seahorses baring their teeth. The man on stilts, of course, features in his early circus drawings. The clown of ocean, much later, brilliant character, punts himself across the sea, not exactly stalking on doggedly like Malachi Stiltjack, but joyously slipped free from all fetters, characterizing nothing but freedom and love. Perhaps he celebrates the end of war because the picture was painted in 1945. But what comes across clearly in a comparison of the work of these two great men is that William is totally devoted to theatre, to high talk, which he found vital to his means of expression. Processions that lack high stilts, in other words, that lack drama or sensation, for him have nothing that catches the eye and can in no way stimulate the spectator. So Malachy is trapped into his profession with a duty to fill the public's need for a thrill. W.B.'s circus animals, his poems, are thespian creations, dramatic art. While Jack, on the other hand, revelled in popular entertainment and from the first saw circus as a way of life, with all its possibilities, lofty or humble. Just look at his painting An Occupation outside. Such drudgery, would this excite you to join the circus? Yet the lead bear and the caged lion must be fed and watered. The performers have disappointments and tragedies and confused emotions despite their high points of glorious athletic skill and courage and their brilliant ability to amuse. The singing clown Johnny Patterson, for example, and you probably all know this story, he was an international star, which was actually unusual for an Irish clown. But he came to a sad end during a performance in his homeland because of his liberal outlook. When challenging religious divisions in his optimistic song, Do Your Best for One Another, he was attacked and destroyed by embittered extremists. So let's look at what Jack has to say about the circus after looking at what W.B. says. And I'm quoting his own words from his book Sligo, which was written when he was in his 50s, a mixture of memories and ponderings. At one point, he considers a reconstruction of the world as a promised land, where there'll be enough of everything for everyone. Better start again, he says, with the first man who can think of a wheelbarrow. But let the beginning be in a circular, confined place, a circus tent. There's nothing like a circus tent, a single pole tent. The double pole tent has its dark corners and its mystery, but it's not so complete as the old single pole whirligig round and round. I see the three men standing on a sandy shore with a circus tent pitched on the sands, and around them the circus wagons, and disillusioned skewbald horses hiding their amusement, and the women and the children of the circus. And so he continues, he sees circus in context, in the round, inside and outside the big top. Jack Yeats first took circus seriously as part of his early theme, Life in the West of Ireland. There were precedents in recent French art reacting against the casual everydayness of the Impressionists. Seurat and Signac began painting colourful circus scenes. Lautrec loved the characterful performers, and Degas loved their beauty and daring. But this was in Paris, in grand stadiums. Jack obviously looked at some of those post-impressionist works, as we see from the stylization of the double jockey act painted in 1916, but he also painted what he was looking at, the unsophisticated travelling circus of the West and elsewhere in Ireland. People who, besides being performers, have down-to-earth lives. Some years ago, my husband received a request from a member of Fawcett's Circus to come and baptize a new baby. The baptism, it was explained to him, would not happen in church, but would take place in the circus ring, true to circus tradition. So the beginning for that baby was in a circular, confined space, a circus tent. The baby was blessed into circus life, the world of the clown and the Ote call rider. Back in the late 19th and early 20th century, French sociologists and historians had already had their eye on the west of Ireland as a relic of an ancient European culture that would soon die. Jack may not have been too much aware of this until he and J.M. Singh were asked to collaborate on a series of articles on the prevailing state of the Western Seaboard for the Manchester Guardian in 1905. By that time, he was already hooked on the life and local customs he had grown up with as a theme with which he couldn't have been more familiar. Its importance became clear as he recognised this remote way of life as a point of reference for contemporary Ireland, looking to reinstate original Celtic culture and values in modern terms. His book, Life in the West of Ireland, is filled with pen and ink images of local life at work and at play, including the circus poster, the circus procession, and the build-up to the actual performance after the circus arrives in town. And this objective viewpoint, together with a touch of humour and personal enjoyment, continued for years, even after he turned to oil almost exclusively. Unlike other painters of the West, like Paul Henry and Charles Lamb, he saw the circus, visiting each country town perhaps once a year, as the locals' opportunity to connect with the outside world, an exciting expansion of the world they already knew. Even in the 20s, in Plains and The Singing Clown, both here, thank goodness, his approach is based instinctively on narrative. He appeared to be developing a completely new, unorthodox style in these paintings, crazily applying paint virtually straight from the tube, no pre-mixing of colours, but shifting them about with brush and knife and finger. In reality, he had gradually eased himself into what in Joyce or Virginia Woolf would be seen as a stream of thought mode. He still painted life in the west of Ireland, but as a shanachie embroidering his tale. And the difference now from the early objective representations is the more personal note. A central dark element hovers in Plains, and Johnny Patterson exudes an unforgettable rural-like poignancy that separates the clown from his audience. The Kaleidoscopic Clowns fall into the circus ring like a hallucination in a dream in They Come, They Come. Yeats based this painting on a drawing he had published years before as The Entry of the Clowns. And, by the way, its colour and dramatic immediacy inspired Joan Denise Moriarty of the Irish Ballet Company to compose a short ballet for the opening of Cork Rusk in 1975, where They Come was among the exhibits. But notice the difference in title in this later work. It's not just a statement of fact, say, enter the clowns, but it's an open phrase, they come, that suggests anticipation, expectation, satisfaction, hopefully, thrill of a moment, even in a more esoteric way, the arrival of unearthly messengers. I think you were thinking of something even worse. Words have become crucial now at this point in his painting, which brings us to what I'm supposed to be talking about, metaphor, in Jack Yeats's work. He'd obviously absorbed circus into his overview of life and in different ways identified the clown in the conventional way with the artist. Metaphor, with its inherent ambiguity and filaments of possibilities, became deliberate in his art when the artist was also concentrating on writing his allegorical novels and plays. In these last, the clown is divided into two persona. Bowsy, the old-style clumsy misfit, and his counterpart, Mr. No Matter. And one can say with confidence that Mr. No Matter is Yeats's own view of himself, a sophisticated, desolate clown. All my life I travelled without a ticket, he wrote, and explained how he slipped under the carriage seat when the inspector came round, which is probably why they don't make them so capacious nowadays, the space under the seats. However, the circus clown's costume from Watteau and before to Yeats and Gerard Dillon is ineffably picturesque, while these two literary clowns, Bowsy and Mr. No Matter, dress in everyday clothes and appear thus, and for metaphor, in the artist's late oils. In the 1937 oil, South Pacific, which again is here, Yeats takes two circus people, as he noted them, in traditional costume out of the performance area and places them on a tropical island surrounded by rocks and lush vegetation beneath a brilliantly coloured sky. This is one of the few instances of a nude or nearly naked girl appearing in the artist's work. I'm sure she's wearing a skin-coloured bathing dress. The water conceals that. She too is a performer, maybe a mermaid, whom he had seen in New York in a glass water tank, and this intrigued him as a dramatic prop and may explain the queer shape of the pool. In the painting, she floats in the pool beside the clowns, one black, one white. And surely there's a message here. 3 fantasy performers, unassociated with each other, planked down together in a fabulous setting. The picture's ambiguity is amplified by the introduction of canvas stool and sun hat, more suitable to a European beach than a rocky ravine or South Sea island, and embellishes the notion of the absurdity of Irish clown and Liverpudlian Christy minstrel outside their own sphere. And I'm glad to say there's another Christy minstrel in Derby Day in the exhibition as well. There is a dark resonance in the traditionally tragic faces of both clowns, both rejects, yet essential to society for their entertainment value, much as was the early barrel man, again on the walls, shades of the medieval stocks, but so popular at West of Ireland fairs as sideshows. The clown conveys a more personal message in this grand conversation was Under the Rose, a title Yeats took from one of the early 19th century nationalist ballads he had published in a broadsheet 40 years before. Sub Rosa, which means under the rose, is a well-worn figure of speech referring to secrecy. The rose preoccupied W.B. for years as a mystic Christian symbol. Jack wasn't so esoteric with it. He adopted the rose for nationalist reasons, Roisin Dubh, or My Dark Rosaline. And then the rose became so important to him that he pinned one, or a velvet rose if he hadn't the real thing, somebody said he ordered it from Switzer's, to the top of his easel. He celebrated this in the scene painter's rose, and he always painted under it, and secretly. No one, even his wife, wasn't allowed to see him at work. In 1943, however, when invited to a dinner in his honour at the Dublin Arts Club, the president of the Royal Hibernian Academy delivered a flattering speech, capping what Yeats regarded as empty phrases with an unforgivable insult. He presented the artist's wife with a paper rose. Yeats was astounded by this insensitive revelation of his private way of working, and he returned home resolved to paint in future for his satisfaction alone, and to disregard the perplexities of those who found his symbolism too obscure. So he can't complain. Years before, he had painted the clown and the Ote call rider in the circus ring, where she parades her beauty and grace and haughtily disdains his clumsy adoration. But here they meet as equals, fellow performers, in the wings of the tent. The clown sitting on an orange box, supping tea, ignoring the beauteous one who dreams under the beautiful rose adorning the tip of her whip. Whatever about their professional roles in circus, their real life is lived sub rosa. And at another level, you can see the artist implies that this is how the artist, the clown, meets his inspiration, under the rose in privacy. Another personality from popular entertainment who appears here, the Master of Ceremonies, shares the irony of the clown's role, as we learn again from the artist's book, Sligo. There was that boxing MC, he writes, the effulgence of whose evening dress, with the white kid gloves and all, will ever cause him to early hop into the memory of those who had the pleasure to view him. He realized himself the splendor of his regalia, for when he left the battlefield side and drifted away among the darker citizens, his lustre was dimmed beneath a sober mackintosh, and his crisped, oiled, and divided locks were covered with a small and discreet blue cloth cap, little larger than a cricketer's cap, and worn forward on the brows. The last Dawn But One is a slightly ominous title, but Yeats simply iterates a regular superstition in the travelling circus that every stop during their travels must be regarded as the last dawn but one. It is unlucky to linger, and the circus owner must strike camp and move on. Perhaps the small child with fair hair, symbolising youth in so many of his late paintings, who stands up on the dismantled big wheel, is a harbinger of good luck, because in the companion picture, Meeting the Dawn, the circus people, led by the figure on horseback and a man with a banner, form a procession of performers and entourage moving up the hill towards the light as a metaphor for optimism. For Gawoher, clear the way, and the cavalier's farewell to his steed also appoint performers associated with travelling companies to express human emotions and expectancies in metaphorical fashion. Both images carry the charm of childish innocence. The mythical hero in the first recalls the Celtic saints Iarla and Kenny, whom Yeats designed for his sister Dún to embroider on the sodality banners for Loughrea Cathedral in 1903. These triumphant paintings are a complete contrast with the group of works in 1947, before these were painted, which was when the artist's wife died, and he could only see the circus tent, the big top, collapsed on the ground, a most tragic painting. Yeats's conception of the circus expanded so much that it was natural to bring his characters outside like this into the real world, while maintaining their uniqueness and individuality, forcing us to identify with them as well, to question ourselves whether we are more ridiculous than they. In his book, The Careless Flower, Yeats equates the circus physically with the landscape. The circus tent becomes the sky. Circus tent above the great round dish of grey-blue sea. And the sea, that's where the clown of Ocean, whom he remembered from his trip to New York on a liner in 1904 with the enjoyment of the second steward's one-man show. Jack's clown of Ocean rides on his raft in an ecstasy of crazy freedom. The ocean an emblem of his glorious, unpredictable world. And the sky image, the circus tent as sky. When you consider the inevitable gaps in the upper canvas of the travelling tent, you always get them in Yeats's paintings, where the blue sky, so near, is framed during the day, and at night becomes the mysterious, infinite indigo sparkling with stars. For clown, master of ceremonies, and mythical heroes, life is an illusion. And is this Yeats's implicit message for the rest of us? 3 late clown paintings are perhaps the most moving works in this beautiful exhibition. The clown is alone in the shadow of the tent. Even the surroundings are lonely. There's an emptiness. And the silhouette of his melancholy face and absurd costume ironically echo the triangular radiance of the opening of the tent behind him. In They Love Me, the sardonic clown savours the applause with theatrical condescension in full realisation of the fickleness of human love. You can only see the very fashionable hats of the ladies among the audience surrounding him. But you can almost see Macleamore here in this clown face, or if you're old enough you can, receiving adulation from his audience. While Glory highlights the paradoxical nature of the clown's profession in his tragi-comic pseudo-arrogant pose and world-weary expression, Stardom has been achieved by flaunting his defects as a mortal. He knows well how dubious and ephemeral fame is, and finds glory, which may be a halo round his head in the painting, but he finds the glory in the presence of simple innocence and affection. Interestingly, Yeats painted a second picture called Glory. He very rarely repeats a title. You could almost count them on the fingers of one hand. But he painted a second picture called Glory a few years later, where the child is the centre of attention, raising himself above his two elderly companions to throw his young arms up to the sky, singing in pure exultation and joy. I'm not sure, really, I must confess, about the term metaphor when addressing these late paintings. I prefer metamorphosis, for in every way, the artist has transformed actual experiences and characters and paint onto an unexpected and visionary plane, elusive and fluid, and defying explanation. Yeats himself, I've been told, if he chose to talk about one of his pictures, would then turn to you and say, "Now, you tell me what it's about." So they're meant to be elusive, and as I say, we can't complain. So I've been asked to declare the exhibition open, which is open already, and I've talked too much, but you can see that I've absolutely no hesitation in recommending and telling you to go and see it many, many times.